G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast, and we have footy. We are talking round zero, all the wash up. How many times have we changed our teams since those games? There is a lot to talk about. Let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Busted the goal from inside the field. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, and joined as always by Luke, coach of the Mighty Oxlongs. How are you, mate? We've had footy to watch on the weekend.
We have had footy. I'm a little bit in between. I know we had footy. It was good, but part of me just kind of wishes that we didn't have that cheat sheet.
Yeah.
It's presented perhaps more questions than answers as everything has this preseason, I think. Yeah, it feels like there's a few get-out-of-jail-free cards being handed out.
Definitely.
And there's, like I said, more questions than answers. So very interesting stuff to talk about today.
And I want to start on this because obviously we're going to talk about each individual game and some of the players specifically from the games. But I guess just to start off with, like, the experience that was opening rounds from like a fantasy point of view, like the psychology of you're getting real data, you're getting scores that are going to affect price movements next round. The balance between overreacting and having a team flooded with all these players that are going well. And, obviously things have changed, right? So we need to have some level of, we've got to change our minds and things like that. But what's the right balance? I found that very fascinating just with myself and thinking like, these players that maybe I didn't consider too heavily before now finding their way into my teams. How did you find that? Like, did you...
Yeah, well, I think you're a good case study to talk about just based on what you were talking about off air before. But it was interesting. Halfway through the weekend, I think I gave you my laptop and I said, have a look at my new team, Mitch. And you looked at it and you go, oh, it's exactly the same as my team. So, which is somewhat to be expected. We just talk to each other all the time. And so we kind of end up sharing similar opinions, or I end up stealing your opinions, basically. But the interesting thing about opening round is now that's given you a different look. And guys like, we'll talk about these guys in more detail later, but guys like Whitfield, guys like Heaney, suddenly, like you said, the psychology of it is you've got a 120 on the board, you've got some real data. Can these guys sneak in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, let's compare it to a normal round one game where, like, say these guys come out, like, we're maybe not necessarily trading them in, but that's maybe more because their price has already moved, and obviously you've only got 2 trades after round one, so they might not be of the highest priority, whereas we've still got the flexibility to move our entire teams around. It's just fascinating to me. So I think, reading the scores across the 4 games, there's a lot of shuffling that I think could be made. Whether or not that's going to help our teams or hurt our teams in the long run, I think we're going to find out. Like, it's again not something we've ever really done before with this kind of the way they've structured it out. But it will be very fascinating to see which is the right approach and. If overreacting and getting a lot of these guys in is not the way to go, or if maybe we look back and go, it was right there, like we should have just jumped on these guys. So
I think the interesting question, and like I said, we'll delve into it more in a bit, is that initial price rise that you're going to get worth missing that player potentially for a week?
Yes.
But then the more detailed level of that is, well, with a guy like, let's say, Heaney for a second, that has around 5 buy.
Yep.
Maybe you get all the price rises and you don't miss him in a perfect
world. You just
world
trade
because
him
you
out.
trade him out when Adams comes. So, oh man, I'm excited. There's stuff to talk about.
Yeah, so I want to start there because, like, if you look at some of those players, like someone like an Isaac Heaney, his price has not moved. Obviously, he's still $722K. But if this was a normal round, his price would have gone up at least $30K. You would think. I think some of the smarter people out there have hypothesized that he'd be about a $755,000 player now, and obviously with a low break even. Someone like a Whitfield, similarly, he'd be going up $30,000 to $35,000, so he'd be around that $890 rather than like an $855. Brody Grundy had a big game, so he's going to be priced over $700 if it was a normal round.
You're going to have to eat your words on Brody.
So if you start all those if you start all those players, you're effectively starting like $100K, like your starting budget is effectively 100k higher than a normal round. So
I'd be happy if someone gave me an extra 100k.
It's a really good place to start. But
Hell
you said, you're going to be missing those guys in those rounds. And this sounds like, we already knew all this sort of stuff, but it just feels different now that you're faced with the reality of knowing which of those players are. And can we work our way around it? So
definitely.
It'll be interesting to see how valuable that is and how you can maybe cover some of those players if you choose to load up with a few more than maybe we were considering just a week ago.
For sure. The way we'll go through this podcast is we'll go through each of the games, and then we'll obviously stop on key players and talk about potentially some of the strategy around that and kind of what we're thinking. So should we start with the Sydney-Melbourne game?
Sydney-Melbourne. It's probably, I would say, the most relevant AFL fantasy game because
the one I couldn't watch.
A lot of players we were considering, plus both these teams don't have their bye rounds until rounds 5 and 6. So a bit more flexibility to change our teams by the time those players do have their byes. We'll start talking about the Melbourne Demons. Now, first off the bat, a player that some of us might have considering, Jack Billins, starting as a sub. So lined straight through them before the game even started. That really surprised me.
It did surprise me also. But the way I feel is this is actually good because there's no ambiguity.
We have no.
Do you know what I mean?
Discussion really. Line through him.
Yep.
Don't bother considering him.
That's it. Yeah. In a world where we are so betwixt and between, at least with this one, we're certain. Don't start Jack Billings.
I want to talk to you about Christian Salem because I think he is actually one of the most fascinating players from this game because it's not as straightforward as Jack Billings. Now, watching this game, and I was texting the group chat that we were in, the first half, I was actually saying...
The group chat, you mean the one with just us?
Yeah, just us and your old man. So...
Big group chat.
Ellie's in there, but she just ignores us.
Yeah, she's just a watcher.
So I was saying... I want him to slow down because he's done enough for me, and I don't want everyone to jump on.
Well, you got what you wished for.
I got what I wished for, but maybe not the way I wanted it to happen because in the first half, he had the role. 75% CBAs in quarters 1 and 2. He attended 6 out of 8 CBAs. Now, the other thing was the first half was very low scoring, so those CBAs were fewer and farther in between.
Yep.
In the second half, 2 things happened. Bowie got injured, and he's going to miss the next 8 weeks. Plus, I think the team's adjusted a bit more to that kind of humidity, sloppy weather, basically wet weather footy.
Yes.
And took a little bit less care in terms of those inside 450s, a bit more just get the ball forward kind of action, which the whole reason Salem's in that midfield is because they want that cleaner entry into the forward 50. So in the second half, he only attended 3 out of, I want to say... I think there was 15 or so CBAs. So his CBAs went way down and Sparrow's went way up. So Sparrow had no CBAs in the first half and he came in that second half and went in there. So the question now is, all right, is this something that they are going to be doing more moving forward, or is this just an adaptation to the game where one of your defenders went down and then you're moving Salem back and the game's a bit more wet so you don't need him in the midfield? Or is this something they're going to move on going forward? I guess the teams are going to let us know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Melbourne fans will obviously be far more in tune than we are. But if I was a betting man, I'd say it was to cover an injury in game.
Yep.
I think that if you've had this plan for Salem to be part of your midfield because he's an elite distributor going inside 50 all pre-season, it just wouldn't, to me, make sense to go, oh, Bowie's out, Salem, just go back and suddenly we're going to abandon that plan. That to me, doesn't feel exactly like what you would do. You mentioned it before, but the teams are going to be crucial. And not only the teams, but watching everything that comes out of Melbourne in terms of press conferences and whatnot this week as well, because there'll be some information that we can use to glean the situation as well. So if I was a betting man, I'd maybe this is wishful thinking too, but I think Salem stays in that role. And like you said, the game in the second half, because the teams did adapt to the fact that it was kind of essentially wet weather footy and slippery, the game didn't suit him. He's going to be the kind of guy that's getting that, inside 45 kick and possessing the ball and then using it well inside.
He still scored all right. I think what did he finish on, a 95? So based on his price, that's nearly 20 points above his price stat figure. So
we would take that.
We would definitely take that. I think that's what we're sort of looking for. And I do want to just say, if you were considering Salem, and he is a little bit more unique, so a little bit more of a niche pick here, but you look at the CBAs and you see 38% next to his name. I do believe that's a bit misleading because, like we said, Tom Sparrow had no CBAs in the first half, and he ended on 54%. There was way more centre bounces in that second half because teams were scoring a lot more. But if effectively, Sparrow and Salem had the same roles, just flipped in terms of the halves. So his first half, he was right up there with the big four. It's just, I guess, a matter of how much do you think we're going to see that same first half role moving forward based on how their teams are named. So if someone like a Hall comes in, or you know, another player that's actually on the list comes in, they might that might give us some intel and to say, okay, Salem's back into the midfield. It was just a second half's kind of patch up, or if they bring in another midfielder or a forward, maybe that means we fade someone like a Salem and he's got a bit more of that halfback role.
Yeah. And I know you can't read into too much about where the players are named on the team sheet, but we'll be watching closely.
They're also on the Sunday as well, so you're going to have, a few things to decide before then. So
it's tough. Sucks. One other thing that I will say, because I have said it about other players previously, is that scoring was a little sporadic. So 13 points in the first quarter, 45 points in the second quarter.
Dominated the second quarter, yeah.
So I'm more hot on Salem, but just to be transparent and fair, I've said that about players before, so that's something to keep an eye on. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's move on to the next player on the list here. Caleb Windsor was someone we're considering on our forward bench as a rookie. He played the wing role just like we've seen. He did okay. There was a lot of times where there was points there that he just kind of let slip through his fingers. So dropped, I think, a mark or two, couple of near tackles that he didn't quite stick and things like that. Scored, what do you have, a 45, I want to say?
Yeah, it was in the 40s, I think.
There was moments where I thought, wow, that's like a great play from a first-year player. And there was also moments where I thought, oh, that's like, a very critical error that led straight to a transition, a goal from the other team. So leaving the game, I felt a little bit less confident with his scoring potential and even his job security in the Melbourne team as well. But I'm not sure if I'm overreacting to the first game from a Windsor. What are your thoughts?
I think maybe that you could be a little bit. I think when a club's so hot on a prospect in the preseason, it would be a real backflip to go away from a guy that we know. Guys are going to be shaky when they come in for their first couple of games. It's probably more of an anomaly when a guy comes in and just absolutely looks at the level. So I think this guy is what Melbourne need as well. There's just from their footy perspective, they want the guy that breaks the lines. They want the guy that's going to be, kicking inside 50 and whatnot. So look, I like to think that hopefully they'll persist with him. I'd hate to see it after maybe not his best game, they just completely go away from him. But it also, when we're picking these rookies and we have a free look at the first score, it's very hard to pick them when the score's not great.
Yeah, and I think just because he is a little bit more of that elevated price, I don't think he's someone that you put a line through. I think if you have enough money and you're happy with the rest of your team and you can go out and get him instead of maybe a basement price player, that's fine. I think he's going to be a decent rookie, but I also don't think you have to have him either. Yeah. So if the difference between you getting a premium or a mid-pricer that you really like or someone that you're a bit unsure of is going from him down to maybe someone a bit cheaper, I'd also tick that move off. So I think that was just kind of my thoughts of those forwards. I think I had him as like number 4 in our rankings when we did that rookie thing there. I think there's a gap between those top 3 and then him as well. So bit of flexibility to move in and out of your side depending on what that gets you is sort of my point there. Let's talk about another rookie here. We'll skip a couple of other players we'll discuss a bit in a second. But Blake Howes, to me, I thought he looked really good. What he scored, like a 70-something. I think that it's a 74. He's a basement price defender. We need those basement price defenders. I actually went away from this game thinking his job security looks pretty solid to me. I actually thought he impressed just one-on-one defensively and did a couple of good team things. So I think pretty much, to me, he's a bit of a lock on our bench. Not a fieldable option, but he's going to make some good cash from this game.
Yeah, I only got to catch the fourth quarter, but what I did see looked right at home, and just looking at his scoring breakdown across the quarters as well, was like pretty consistent, which is quite unusual for a rookie as well. So, he's around that sort of 20-point mark for each of the quarters, which is good. So if he can do that on a line where we need rookies, then that's awesome for us.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty confident locking him in. Let's talk about Max Gawn.
Is he gone from your team after the
He
performance?
is not gone. He did not actually meet his break even, which is a little bit shit. Had 87. He was on the 92, but late score adjustments brought him down. So his price out figure is 92. So look, it's not going to be like he drops a bunch of cash, but it's not the big start you want from him. But the fact that he scored like an 87 in a game where he looked exhausted and there was a very distinct effort to really be physical with him.
Yeah.
Is that a good sign or a bad sign? I don't know.
It's kind of, you can look at it both ways, can't you? Because I looked at it and thought, oh man, round 0 and he looks beat up. But then from what I heard from you in the first 3 quarters, every opportunity that any Sydney midfielder, and then on top of that, Grundy had to beat the shit out of him, they essentially did. But in the 4th quarter, when I turned the TV on, I thought, what the fuck's Max going to do? And he looked exhausted.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, I'm choosing to look at it glass half full and thinking, wow, Brodie Grundy came out and showed the world that he's still Brodie Grundy.
Yep.
And Max Gawn was just, unfortunately, the victim.
Yeah, I think so. The only concern I would have is like teams see this and see the success against a Max Gawn and maybe try and emulate that. But I think Max is good enough and a smart enough player to kind of expect that, and I think he'll adjust. I think he'll be fine, and I think he's still enough value that I'm pretty happy to still have him in my team.
A couple of things on that point as well. I guarantee you Gawn will say that, because I think Gawn actually came out after the game and said, like, he acknowledged, well done, Brodie Grundy, and well done, Sydney, for their tactics. He said, I'll be ready next time. But the other thing is teams will do that, but not all teams will. Like, I thought about, they play the Bulldogs this coming week.
Tim English won't be able to do that, right?
Tim English is, well, I don't think Tim English is going to. And you look at the Bulldogs midfield, they're just worried about getting the pill themselves.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I also will say is if another team comes out and does that to Melbourne, I don't expect this next time Viney, Oliver, Petrarca just to be standing around watching it. I'd expect there to be a little bit of
back up their captain.
Exactly. So I think that they might have just taken note of that and gone, fuck, we needed to probably stand up a little bit there too. So
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of the guys that got a great score, 120 plus, priced a little bit cheaper at that 100 mark, Jack Viney is someone that I've kept an eye on a little bit here and there. He scored 123 now. He did have...
This guy.
He did have...
I've been keeping an eye on him now that he's scored a 130.
Mate, he's in my Bolter team. Don't.
Sorry.
Don't argue with me over there. But he did kick 2 goals, which I think is probably the reason that I think that maybe this is a little bit more of a flash in the pan than maybe some of the others. But he did look good. Is he someone with a round 6 bye, like we sort of said with some of those others, that you could maybe ride the cash gen that he will probably get from this 123 in opening round?
The element of riding the cash gen is something that could appeal to you. I definitely see the future, Oliver I don't see going at 89 once he gets back to game fitness. I don't see Petrarca going at 87. But in saying that, with someone like, let's say, someone like Libba last year, everyone just kind of...
We kept sort of saying, nah.
It's not. And if you had to pick Libba to start the year, that would have been a great pick. So, there's every chance, but I think there's probably more things pointing to that he'll end up defaulting back to what he does.
I tend to agree, but I will say on this one, we did see, obviously, Clayton Oliver was someone we weren't sure we would see in this game, but he did play, and he played 82% time on ground, which...
Underdone by, surely.
Probably a little bit underdone, and he didn't score as well, but was, second highest midfielder in terms of their CBAs. He looked very much like Clayton Oliver, like he was in there getting his tackles.
So.
And,
who were you expecting him to look like? Takes off the mask. It's not me.
It's Bowie. That's the other redhead. But... yeah, obviously he's still building his fitness back up, I guess, a little bit, and maybe a little bit polished, a bit better. So,
how different is I know you didn't play footy except for under 12s, but how different is game?
Except for under 12s.
Yeah, just a little drive by there too. But how different is game fitness to running? Because these players have been doing all the running in the world over the preseason, and then all throughout the games you saw people cramping, and
it's even just, Nick Dacos had cramps in the last game.
And that bloke is
he's fit as anyone.
He's an Adonis.
And just reiterating the difference between those preseason match styles and the games we saw on the weekend.
You forget, but don't you watch the preseason and think, oh yeah, we're really getting some good intel.
Fast.
It's dog shit.
It is nothing like
the real
these
stuff.
games. Yeah, it is.
Oh my God.
So much more physical, so much more contested, but good timely reminder. All right, let's go away from Melbourne. Let's talk about Sydney. We did touch on Brodie Grundy before, but he, like we said, compared to the preseason, looked much better in this game. And as someone who's been down on him this season, I think I'm going to have to eat my words, because he did the things that I wanted to see in terms of he was taking intercept marks.
Yeah.
He was very active in terms of the disposal chains. He looked fit. Like he was still running hard at the end of the game compared to someone like a Max Gawn.
And when you're saying taking like intercept marks, like contested marks against Max Gawn,
Yeah.
who we all
Yeah.
rate as one of the best, marking ruckmen. So, man, it looked good. It looked really good.
Yeah, so I've come around to I think that I will probably be starting him after thinking for much of the preseason that I don't think I will. And just with that 118 already in there, there's a world where maybe you ride up to round 5 and then maybe cash out to a Tristan Jerry and keep going up with that price. I don't think that limits you to that, but I think just to get the season started, it's probably the best way to go. His ownership, you would think, also will spike back up to where it was before the last preseason game.
Yeah, and I, as usual, have kind of been subscribing to your way of thinking with the Grundy thing. But I think now when we look back at it, there's the two reasons: is you're going to get that price rise. As well, but there's that there's that break glass in case of emergency, and if it goes to shit, you can go
down if you want. Yeah.
And the ownership is scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. Like I said in that last podcast after those community games, like imagine if that previous game was all we got, and we all jumped off Brody Grundy, and then he put this on your head.
It's the round 0. I don't know. There's so we essentially get out of jail with Grundy, potentially,
we were going to maybe
because we weren't. And then there's people who you can't anticipate an injury, but of course, Kitty Coleman,
Errol Goulden,
poor bugger, Errol Goulden gave it a low score. So these are all the things where we'd all be scrambling to fix it up. But this year, it's
little extra gift there. Let's go to James Jordan. Next one. He did start very slowly in this game, but found the groove in the after that first quarter and the second half especially. I don't think we need to overthink this one. Yep. He's so cheap. He did enough to me, and I think you start him there. I also think the conditions probably didn't suit him very well either. So when hopefully the game is a little bit cleaner, I think he'll score better. But even he went, what did he go, 25 over his price, that figure?
Yeah,
so.
And even when you say start slow, quarter 1, but over the first 2 quarters he had 42 points. So it for a guy that, you said.
Yeah, you got to remind yourself, he's very cheap. So I think that, don't overthink that one. Let's talk Isaac Heaney.
He's in your team, so sell us on...
Spoilers!
Yeah, sorry, I've just peeked behind the curtains. But
yes.
Why is he in? This is a trap.
Is it real? Is the role real? We heard it. We saw it in the preseason game. We also saw the injury to Taylor Adams, the injury to Luke Parker. There's obviously no Callum Mills there. I think it's real. I think it's real at least until those guys come back.
You had a good tweet, but didn't you say he's the boy who cries CBAs?
Oh, he's the boy who cries CBAs. Like, we hear it every single year and go, oh, yeah, he's starting CBAs. Who cares? He's not going to actually do it when the real stuff starts. But when, the boy who cried wolf, when the wolf's actually there and he's crying wolf, the CBAs are actually there now.
He's going to get eaten.
So
it's not a great metaphor, is it?
I don't know. I kind of ruined it there. But the point is that the knee-jerk reaction is to go, I've seen this happen before. They talk about it all the time in the preseason. It's been 6 preseasons in a row where he's supposed to get more midfield time. We're not going to believe it this year. And this year, when they add Taylor Adams, they add James Jordan, go figure, he gets a CBA role. I think it's real at least until those boys are back. And so this is the play where can you start him, ride that cash, when those guys do come back, trade him over to someone like a Flanders. Compare him to someone like a Luke Jackson. I prefer going the Isaac Heaney route than the Luke Jackson route personally because you've got that inbuilt price rise. Yeah. And if you look at Sydney's draw to start off with, it's quite friendly. And there's some matchups in there. Even if he does shift a little bit more forward, I could still see some decent scores from him. He's a little bit cheaper. But I could easily be burnt on this one as well if he's going back next game pure forward. And I think there were some quotes as well from the coach saying that they thought about, moving him forward even when in this game he looked dominant. So if they're going to think of that when he's playing great, if he's not playing so good, that might be an easy flick for them. So there is risk.
Yeah, his stat line was so diverse, wasn't it? It was
tackles,
really good
marks,
to look at. Because you've got the 120 built in, if he has 0 CBAs this coming week and gets his usual 75-80, he's not going to go down in price because he's going to have a really low break even. And then you just jump to the mid-pricer that you missed.
Jump off, yeah.
We're always going to miss a mid-pricer and there's so many different mid-price options in the forward line this year, that you're bound to miss one. So if you see that the roles change, you get it with conviction and you don't lose any money, and you.
Yep.
But if it works, then you look like a genius.
Yeah, you do look like a genius. But I think.
But you could look.
Oh, you want me to?
Nah, don't. Oh, he's played it
like
now.
rock stars, huh? And now we're a fucking bunch of wanko. Yeah, bunch of fucking
I
clowns.
tried to throw you the alley.
Bunch of fucking clowns.
And you just rim jammed it.
I was thinking of my next point that I was going to say.
Sorry.
But I think to add on to that, and I think another reason that he's now sitting in my side is because of another player in his own team, Matt Roberts, and a bit of a structure thing that's changed my mind in terms of our forward lines.
Okay.
Matt Roberts looked like the real deal. He had a great role. He even pushed someone like a Jake Lloyd onto the wing a lot in this game as well.
Yeah, right.
Took kick-ins. I think he had the most kick-ins for Sydney. Scored a 91. Obviously, you lock him into your team. The question is more, is he on your field or is he on your bench? And so before, when I was in my structure having 2 rookies on my forward line, and 2 in my midfield, if I switch that around and go to 3 in my midfield and move like a Harley Reid to F6, then I've got one more space in my forward line to pick, and so Heaney is that guy that maybe can take that role and sacrifice maybe a more expensive mid-pricer in my midfield. So
that's essentially what you're weighing up, isn't it? It's like, do you like Heaney with a 120 in the bank versus, like, for you in particular, guys like Jai Newcomb, if you're hot on,
LDU.
Butters, LDU, these kind of guys. So I can see if people are scared away by LDU's absolute stinker, I can see this being a good play. And this is the thing you mentioned before. This game was quite like slippery and wet.
Yeah.
And so
it was a bar of soap out there.
So that half-back roll for Roberts, like a 91, that's impressive in those conditions.
He looked good. He looked really good. Took a few instep marks, and they definitely used him a lot. So
it's definitely an interesting structure debate.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting thought. When you name those guys up there, it's still like Butters, Newcomb, LDU, even if you go a bit cheaper in the Ollie Wines, Matt Crouch, and those sort of types, something still makes me feel like I feel more comfortable with those guys. But
if Isaac Heaney's a gun. Like
he's a great
if we
player.
knew that Isaac Heaney played in the centre bounces, we would all be picking him.
Yeah.
It's purely the role. It's not like, can Isaac Heaney score?
Yeah, it's just can he stay in the role?
He's been this is awful, but from a fantasy perspective, he's been a wasted talent.
Yeah, he's been a tease every single year.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable player, but from a fantasy perspective, wasted.
Yes, so very, very interesting. But I don't know if I completely have the answer right now, but he's definitely someone that I am at least entertaining the thought of.
Yep.
I think it does come down to a lot of structure debates in terms of whether you start him or not. Let's finish this one off with Errol Goulden, who
we go for half an hour on one game.
This is the big game, though.
Yeah.
Errol Goulden scored the 69. I think, like you said before, this is one that I think a lot of people have been saved by starting him.
I know last podcast I said when the question's 69, the answer's always yes. But in this case, we need to take a rain check because you're not getting a 69 with Errol priced at $1 million.
Yeah, absolutely. His price is going to fall backwards, and maybe he's someone that benefits when those guys, the inside guys, come back in. He gets more of those outside ball.
This could be an anomaly as well.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Let's go on to the next game here. A little bit less to talk about here. Brisbane versus Carlton. Some very sad news for this one, for multiple players. Kenny Coleman, ACL. Now, very, very sad for him, and obviously he's going to be missing this season. But from a fantasy point of view, again, might be saving a few people. We were never super hot on him.
You didn't bring him into your bloody dreaded D4 spot, did you? Is this what's happened?
No, I think he never made it that hot. But no, I think his price, he was always D5.
I think any defender you'd bring in needs to be wrapped in bubble wrap because you're haunted back there, I think.
Yeah, I think so. That's not a good sign.
But first and foremost, terrible news for him as a player.
It sucks for Brisbane Lions too because he's a very key part for them. And also, on the flip side, Sam Docherty did his ACL and he actually came back out on the field for a little bit and played on that knee. And obviously, they then called it. But ACL and meniscus. Third ACL, cancer, age 30. Is this the last time we've seen him?
It would be sad if it
That'd
is,
be
but
incredibly sad because he's one of my greatest guy, like one of the greatest guys in the AFL.
But you could definitely excuse him for wanting to hang him up.
Yeah, that sucks for him. So with two of those options, obviously, especially with Kenny Coleman, one of the main guys we'll look at here is Zach Williams. Now, he scored, again, another 69.
This is a case.
Very nice.
where the answer is yes. It's lost. The moment's lost.
It's very nice.
It is very nice, but The first half looked great.
Yes.
Everyone was locking him in there.
Yes.
Second half, very much slowed down.
Moist is
Moist.
what I'll say.
And also, Carlton were under siege in that first half, and being the defender, I don't know, is there something to the fact that they got on top of the game a little bit more, made that big comeback, and does that mean that his scoring was a little bit less? Or
Perhaps there's a bit to it, but we watched that game together. It was disgustingly sloppy.
Yeah.
It was wet. It was not the game where Zach Williams was going to go big. So a 69 is that's 20 points over.
It's 20 points overs. I did say in
a game
the
not designed for him.
preview that I wanted him to go like 25, 30 points overs. I think I can forgive him, but there's still a little part of me that say, well, like if Sam Doherty didn't injure himself, do you reckon there's a scenario where he was subbed out?
No.
No? You reckon
Who
he
got
was
subbed
good?
out? But I'm
Well, it
just going
was
to
Sam
say.
Doherty.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. But let me have a look at who else was.
I think, yeah.
No, I don't know. Surely not.
I think the fact that he has that round 2 bye.
Orazio Fantasia.
Yeah, he
See
did
ya.
kinda suck. The round 2 bye actually might also work in his favour in terms of you get two games under your belt, have a rest, and get ready for round 3.
Do you mean subbed out from like an injury prevention
like a
perspective?
management.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you meant just like because
No, yeah, like you're just managing him back into that
Okay,
first game.
maybe I can buy into that a little bit, but 20 is this one that you're overthinking? 20
Yeah,
points
probably.
over
I mean,
is a guy that I know we don't see him for in 2 weeks' time. We don't see him again. That sucks, and he hasn't got that big.
He
that
had
big
kick-ins.
price. Who did Carlton have next week?
Bloody the Richmond Cones.
Oh,
So
pick the bloke.
pick the bloke.
The
well,
Richmond
it might not
traffic
live down
cones.
that end. So I don't know.
Mate, he will. Richmond are great at kicking the ball to the opposition defenders.
That's
so
very, very fair.
I suspect that not only will Carlton players be kicking to Williams, but Richmond players too. So
Yeah.
the Richmond traffic cones, I reckon you get him in.
I think for most people he's done enough. I'm not as like gung ho on just lock him in. I'd explore other options, but he is someone that I do think presents obviously a lot of upside. Kai Loman was the only really other option we're looking at. Uses a sub, line through him. I don't really think there was much else to talk about in this game unless you've got someone you want to highlight.
No.
No? All right, let's keep it short and sweet. Move on to the next game. Talking about those cones, Richmond versus Gold Coast. The biggest takeaway I took from this game, Richmond fucking suck.
Traffic cones, mate. There were more cones out there than bloody at a party with Bob Marley.
We are in for a rough season this year, Luke, as Richmond fans. And I think that Richmond are going to be a very green team on the scale of hardness.
Super green.
Especially for those midfielders and forwards. That first half was garbage.
I said this to you. I said this to you at halftime. I said Richmond will get out of jail here. They'll come back a little bit. They'll make it semi-respectable, and the headline will change from Richmond ridiculous rabble to Richmond. There's promising signs.
Maybe something. If we,
I'm a bit of a sicko, and I was almost hoping if
we
you
just
give that
get
kind of
pumped.
effort,
Yeah.
bro. Matt Rowell is a beast, regardless. But
Yes.
Matt Rowell, he had the most clearances of any player
What, he had
in
20
in
clearances?
25 years almost.
Holy shit. We made him look like...
Can somebody go and stand with the bloke?
Oh, yes. And
Bro, let me introduce you to Matt Rowell. Go and stand next to him, please. He'll
He's
take
easy
you
to spot, mate.
He'll
Look at
take
the
you
red
to
hair.
He'll take you to the ball.
Yeah,
if you want to find
absolutely.
the ball, go follow him.
We're going to talk about this guy. I mean, I had him listed down the
Oh
butt,
my
but
God.
Thompson Dow, all I've got here in my notes here is that
Thompson Downs.
sucks. He sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to.
No, but
we don't want to poo-poo, but I would say Thompson down. There's
down. Thompson is down. He is. If anyone considered him because he had that midfield role, I don't know if he's there next week.
It was fantasy sucking. wasn't it?
Hopefully,
It was fantasy.
Dusty and Nank coming back can just give us something. But anyway, let's talk about the Suns.
Yes.
Sam Flanders.
Didn't do enough.
Didn't do enough, but I will say the role looked a lot better than what it did last week. It definitely resembled more of the CBA view that I saw in that first practice match. He had 15. He was still behind those big three midfielders with Rowell with 25, Miller with 21, and Noah Anderson with 20.
Yeah.
But you're like players like I actually don't think they use a single other midfielder inside the CBA. So Humphrey
they
had
didn't.
no CBAs, and he cut into the game last week. So I do think that he's going to still be the F1. I still think he's the F1 for the season. But the 92 just gives you enough of a chance to just watch him for the first two games, I do believe. But still someone I'm very keen to trade into after his early buy round. Would you agree in terms of jumping on him as soon as you can?
I do think so. I mean, things can change, can't they? So
Yeah.
if he comes out in the first two, post this opening round and puts up two more 90s, then I'll be like, maybe I can wait a little bit, especially if there's someone else you need to get to.
Yep.
But I think I still feel confident in that role. He's going to easily be a top 6 forward, so we have to have him at some point.
Yeah.
And if it works to have him early, then hey.
Yeah. If you have in your draft any time between now and the start of the season, I still think that I have him as my number 1 forward. Alex Sexton, the Sex Pistol, he
Sexual
did his thing.
tiger just prowling across half-pack.
Well, yeah, definitely was the tiger out in the field, unlike our bloody cats.
Pussycats.
Pussycats, yeah. He had the 80 points, took 1 kick in compared to Powell's 3 and Budovic's 2, but the fact he was there anyway, I thought he looked fine, so cheap enough.
He's
Lock
so
him
cheap,
in.
so cheap.
A name we haven't talked about probably enough because we only saw him in that one preseason game. Will Powell.
Pow!
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Scared the shit out of me.
Is that what's that from? Is that do the traders do that? Is that where I
don't know.
Am I shamelessly ripping their gear?
I think that's just what you just did.
No, there's a movie where he's like, pow!
I have no idea.
I'm going to find out.
Yeah, you have to find
People
that out
will
for
be
me.
screaming, going like, I know what it is.
Someone's just jumped off their
Pow!
seat in the
I don't think it
train
says
listening
pow,
to
but
this
it's like...
podcast. But he had 106 points, second highest disposals in the game, and equal highest with 9 marks. He's priced decently. He's going to get a bit of, like we said, that price movement to start the year. Is he a sneaky point of difference for us in the back line for those maybe looking for something like that, or are we maybe reaching a little bit here? You're looking for something else.
Sorry, I'm not listening to you. Okay. He played well, didn't he? He played really well. But like you said, the Richmond traffic cones.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, listen. I think this is it. Listen to this. Oh, wait, it's a minute 47.
A minute 47. Jeez. This podcast is already going long enough.
It's the Catalina fucking wine mixer. Pow!
There you go. We have to cut
You
that
haven't
up
seen
now.
Step Brothers?
Well, yeah, I have seen it, but not for a long time. We're going to have to cut that up and use it as a bit of a sound.
Randy here is going to eat your dick.
Okay,
I wonder if people can hear. Okay.
let's go back to the podcast, eh?
Okay.
But yeah, I think he's a good option. I'm probably not going there in Classic, but maybe bump him up your draft board. Talk to me about maybe the one shining light for Richmond in this game, Seth Campbell.
Yeah, that was good to see. Even I did like what I'll say I liked is even though we were 10 goals down when he kicked his first goal, I think every Richmond player got over to him and was really positive with him. So I think when you're that far down, you could be excused for not. But they did that, so it was really good.
I actually thought he looked pretty good.
Two goals to get to that score of 61, but that's a 61 in the bank.
61 in the bank. He's 200k basement price.
I'd be shocked if he gets dropped as well.
I don't think he'll get dropped.
After
I think he'll at
what
least
Richmond
give
served
us a couple of games, and with that price movement already built in there. Like I said before, with like a Windsor, if you go, you make 80k going from him down to a Campbell. I think that there's some merit in doing that one. And
he plays for Essendon.
Classic. But yes, I think of any Richmond Tigers, he would be the one player I think we could maybe consider. Josh Gibcus, I think he scored as good as you can expect. Like we said, he's a 30s and 40s guy.
Yes.
He's just not a fantasy player, I don't think.
We've got better options back there now, I think.
I think so. Jaden Short, God is 100. The ball is going to be down there a lot, but I think there are better options for me personally. Let's move on to the final game, which is the Giants versus Collingwood. And again, we touched on it at the start, but the biggest score in opening round, Lachie Whitfield comes out and drops a 137 on our heads. He had 14 marks, Luke. 14 marks. The next highest in this game was 9.
Yeah.
So he was by far and away the highest mark receiver for both teams. He had 33 disposals. Now, way back when, I did bring up Lachie Whitfield as a player that I was interested in. But now that he's got that 100...
Is there any player you haven't been looking at, mate?
I've been very extensive this preseason. We've talked
He's
a lot
got
of
all
shit.
bases covered.
He comes up against North Melbourne.
He does.
And then goes into West Coast.
Correct.
And then has a round 3 bye. Is he
That
someone
last point's
that...
not as good,
Not the best point, but is he someone that we can... He probably hasn't spent much time in many people's fantasy teams. Is this a bit too left field for a lot of people? Or is he someone that we can definitely consider starting and riding that cash?
It's a similar discussion to the Heaney discussion in terms of popping the big score. The difference there is that you're probably in a position because of the round 3 bye that you kind of have to see him through that bye. Like, unless he gives you...
he's not kind of someone you're flicking off at that round 3 and then...
Unless he gives you 2 more 140s and there's this massive influx of cash and then you can get off. But I just don't...
It'd be hard to trade him out after that, though.
Well, it probably would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So I think you're probably riding this one. Does this depend on how many other bye players you're already keen on?
I think it does. I don't think you can have him and Flanders, for example.
Yeah.
Or maybe him and a Green. Like, if you're really hot on Tom Green, there's a few too many that you're starting to think about because it is so early.
Well, you're talking still about players that have to buy that same week.
That round 3.
But I'm also thinking just like, are you going to get hurt? I know that they have their buys in different weeks, but if you have heaps of players across, like let's say you've got Dacos, you pick Salem, you pick Whitfield, you like Green, you're picking Flanders,
you're
picking...
you got Grundy, you got Gawn.
Over the course of it, is that going to hurt you over the course of it, or does it...
Maybe, yeah. That's a good point.
Maybe the answer is no. I don't know, but I just kind of think like weight of numbers at some point, you're going to have a rookie or a guy that you're expecting to give you a good score, drop a stinker, and it's going to count towards. Like, are you playing with fire? I don't know.
Yeah, it's such a big score that it's going to move his price up a lot. Plus, he's got those back-to-back great matchups. I think he's a genuine option to consider. I don't think, for me personally, I would call anyone reactionary for putting him in their team.
Well, you can't because you did it.
Because I did it. And he's sitting there right now. I'm not 100% sure if I'll go there. But
in true Luke form, now that you've traded, I actually don't mind the look of him. And I think I like Heaney as well, so I'm just going to make some tweaks to my team here.
But yeah, it's an interesting
It's a trading game, mate. I'll start with the same team and out-trade you.
Just out-trade me. But
you're getting that tattoo, mate.
Yeah, well, I still don't know if we're doing that. But I like the dyed hair look a bit more. But we'll maybe reveal that come that round 1 live show. Yeah. But it is going to be something that I think a lot of people might instantly put off and say you're being reactionary, you're jumping and using those scores. But I do think that there is something about Whitfield. He has that injured score built into his price at figure from last season. Plus, I think he performed better when the Giants did better that second half of the year. And boy, did they look good on the weekend.
They really looked good.
And I think that will continue for most of the season. So
he's not going to have 14 marks every week. We understand that. We get that. Yeah. But it's a blueprint. This is the interesting thing too, is like, do we know what's going to happen in the first 3 weeks?
No, we have no idea.
But do we know that Lockie Whitfield scored a 137? And we do.
We do. So we know that.
We talk about all these projections like, he's going to have a round 3 bye. Well,
maybe just bank what you
might get injured. Like, there's so many things can happen is what I'm saying. And so, week to week, we might be thinking back, it would have been nice to have Lockie Whitfield because X, Y, Z's happened and now it doesn't even matter that we have Lockie Whitfield.
Let's talk about some of the Giants' cheaper players. Yep. Aaron Cadman is a player that a lot of people were keen on. He scored a 47, kicked 2 goals to get there. Like we said, with all these Giants players, he has the North and West Coast back-to-back matchups. So he might feast a little bit, but is he someone that you think has done enough to get in there? I tend to think no, but I would forgive you if you wanted to go there. He obviously will still move up in price a little bit off the back of that, but you're still going to want him to go big in these next 2 games to make it worthwhile.
So I know in your structure, you've obviously gone to the 3 rookies on field on the midfield, which means that you've then got Sharp as a bench player in your midfield, which means you have to have less players. So you've kind of, in your structural thing, you've squeezed out Cadman.
Yeah, but so I've gone Campbell instead of him, just at a player who's 20k cheaper. He's got the 60 in there.
And he's got a later buy.
He's got a later buy, so you can maybe just have a bit more of a look. But look, it's a bit of a Hail Mary kind of throw. Like say you have that extra bit of cash, do you feel better having someone like a Windsor who we think is maybe just positionally in a better position, a little bit more expensive, but
so in there, I mean, it's a discussion that everyone will be having because you want to try and nail your rookies. So like you're talking Cadman, you're talking Campbell, you're talking Windsor. Is it just a matter of, if you want to save money and it helps you do what you want to do on the other end, then just make the choice based on that?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm personally just going to fall back onto the rule. I don't love key forwards, whether or not they're rookies or not. I think if I have the option to go with some of those more wings or high half forward players, I think I'm usually going to go there more often than not. But that's just me. Couple of other rookies that really didn't put their hand up. Harvey Thomas, I think we can rule a line through him as the same as Charlie Dean for the Magpies. What about Nick Dacos? He got his 111. He actually, like we said before, was cramping up in that final quarter. I think he sat off like the last 5 or 6 minutes because the game was pretty much, over and done with. Nothing really changes with our view on Dacos. So if you were in before, you're still in. If you're not in before, you're probably still not in.
Yeah. I don't think my views changed, but what I might say is, like, when it comes to that kind of couple of hours before the opening round, maybe just like handcuff me to a table or something because I'm going to be having these like PTSD flashbacks to last year, and he
plays
might,
that Friday night.
If I'm not sort of pretty cuffed up, I think I might.
I will say with players like Grundy, Heaney, all these other guys putting their hands up that maybe weren't in your team before. They're a bunch of round 5 guys. Dacos is that round 5. To me, it makes it harder to justify starting him if you've got those guys in your team, because you're putting yourself in a tricky position to have a lot of those guys potentially missing that round. So, I think that will pretty much do it. I mean, Darcy Cameron scored 131. I don't think we're probably going to be going there. Tom Green, similar to Dacos. If you're hot on him before, maybe if you were someone who was on Goulden before, maybe you're going to swap him out to someone like Tom Green and ride that. But I don't think it's changed my thoughts for him personally.
Is it because obviously Whitfield has the exact same circumstances Tom Green's, just he's cheaper and he's in a different line?
He's cheaper, he's in a different line.
Yeah.
He's going to go up more in price.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thoughts there. I feel like there's other options in my midfield I'd rather just go for.
Well summarised.
So yeah, that might do us there, mate. If anything else you wanted to cover off, any more clips that you want to play on YouTube for the viewers to listen?
I thought that one was good, actually. I can't believe I didn't remember that it was from Step Brothers. Shame on me.
I'll have to get that clip tagged up. That will do it for us. The last podcast before we've got actual footy, because our next podcast is going to be our live show. So make sure, like on screen here, give us that subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up, hit that notification bell. Guys, go over to that round 1 live show ahead of time. Give it a big thumbs up. Let's see if we can get to 150 likes before we hit the live record button. Make sure, schedule it in your calendar. 5 p.m. Daylight savings time.
You've been pumping this up. I'm feeling
it's going to be bigger than Ben-Hur, guys.
I'm feeling a bit of pressure. I'm going to have to do something crazy.
Oh, okay. Stand by for that, guys. But no, it will be a good time. Right. And just get around it. Talk shit with everyone else in the comment section as well. And next time we'll see you guys, it'll be after that first game of the season, and we'll have fantasy scores on our computers and on our phones. So until then, guys, we'll see you later. Bye.